This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and we cover a lot of high-end and kind of expensive products, particularly some of the laptops that we look at are pretty chic things. And now it's time to look at some more affordable things. Just like that Q by 7 tablet we looked at was a pretty good bargain in a 10-inch Windows tablet with a Wacom digitizer. Now we're looking at the Acer Aspire E5. Now the E5 is a big lineup of products. It comprises 14-inch, 15.6-inch, which is what this one is, and 17.3-inch models. Not only that, it runs the gamut of processors. The low end, you have the Pentiums, the Celerons, the AMD A8s. Most of them have ULV low voltage Core i5 CPUs. A couple of them have Core 7, so that's your typical Ultrabook CPU, despite the fact that these are bigger than Ultrabooks, going from 14 to 17.3 inches, but there's even a quad-core i7, so it's hard to make complete generalizations about this, but they all do share the same casings and basic feature sets and 2 display options. Starts as inexpensively as $379 for the 15.6-inch, and it goes up to, ours right here is really pretty nicely equipped. It has a Core i5's Nvidia 940M dedicated graphics for a little gaming fun, and that's $649 with a full HD display, which is pretty reasonable for what you're getting there. And if you find the elusive quad core, you can go up in price, or if you want a little more video RAM with your 940M. All in all, it's a pretty nice package for those of you who are budget conscious, and we're going to look at it now. So this is the Acer Aspire E5. In some ways, the higher end model is a little bit like the Acer Aspire V3, popular with those of you who are looking for a little gaming oomph, that sort of thing. But like I said, it encompasses quite a few models. Most of the ones you're going to find do have the Core i5. Right now, we're looking at Broadwell 5th generation CPUs. I'm sure at some point it'll get refreshed over to Skylake. You get a little bit better battery, a teeny bit more performance. Not a huge difference there, but nothing else is going to change with this model, most likely. So what we're going to say here is going to apply. Now ours is kind of a higher end model. For the E5 series, that means $650. For $650, you actually get a pretty decent 15.6-inch laptop. It has a dual-core i5 CPU. That's a 15-watt Ultrabook CPU, and we have 8 gigs of RAM in here, a 1 terabyte hard drive, and a 1920 by 1080 matte display. This is not an IPS display, but it is an anti-glare display. So you can see it's not picking up too much glare from our studio lights. It's not the world's brightest display. It's about 250 nits, but for a TN panel, it's actually pretty nice looking. It has nice color representation. You know, sometimes TN panels aren't bad. They were used in gaming laptops for a long time for a reason. Anyway, there's none of this. You have to get it just exactly right so it looks good. You have a variety of forward-back viewing angles, which is usually the sore point for a TN panel. Color saturation is pleasing on it. This is not going to win any awards for color saturation. This is not in the price point where it's trying to. Again, this starts around $379. You might even find a little bit lower, and that's with an Intel Celeron or an AMD A8 CPU, 4 gigs of RAM, and a 500 gig hard drive, 1366 by 768 display. So our $650 model moves up, like I said, to the full HD display. Larger hard drive, double the RAM, and by the way, there are 2 RAM slots inside, so you can actually go up to 16 gigs if you want with 2 8-gig modules. And also, we have switchable Nvidia dedicated graphics, which, again, in this price range, that's pretty neat. And it's a fairly capable Nvidia 940M GPU in here. Not like hardcore gamer quality, but good enough to actually make gaming worthwhile and reasonable. You can play like older titles like Max Payne quite well. BioShock Infinite, that's a game that runs well on a variety of hardware. That's going to play. You can play Tomb Raider, quite a few other games. Now, don't expect them all to run on high settings or anything like that at full HD resolution. And we're going to demo BioShock Infinite later so you can see. But you should be able to play at 1920 by 1080 at low to medium settings on a lot of games, even some more recent games. Witcher 3, that one's really demanding. Maybe not. You can always drop down to 1366 by 768. So that's the model for you gamers, the one that we have right here. And again, there's a bunch of more affordable configurations that you can get. If you just want a Core i5 in this, for example, and 8 gigs of RAM, a 500 gig hard drive, you can get it for around $500, probably with the full HD display even. For that money, you're not going to get the creature comforts. This does not have a backlit keyboard. However, it's not a bad keyboard. Key travel on this is pretty good. You got a number pad on the side. I know that's sometimes a rarity on a 15.6-inch laptop. And by the way, Acer also makes E5s that are 14-inch and 17.3-inch. So there's a couple of different sizes that are available there. It has good feel. It is a very clacky, kind of noisy keyboard. And so is the trackpad. This is a lawn trackpad, as those can be sometimes good, sometimes bad. This one works pretty decently, but the whole thing kind of sounds, you know, it's a little rattly, a little bit clacky. And it's a plastic chassis. Now it's got a kind of a crosshatch gray pattern here. It's available with different accent colors around the edges, a variety of different ones. And the lid and the bottom are, well, genuine plastic too, which is fine. It's durable, and for this price point, that's fair enough. And Acer's not shy for trying things. It shows fingerprints a little, you can see, but it has a sort of faux fabric finish, almost like a gabardine pattern or a linen pattern. So that makes it a little different, and it makes it a little fingerprint resistant, also makes it grippy. And the bottom is the same way. It's got that same kind of pattern on it. Different, isn't it? You see we've got ventilation holes right here, plenty of them, down-firing speakers on each corner, moderately decent speakers, they're fine. This looks like an optical drive. The first thing you want to do is yank it out. And there's a screw right over here. If you unscrew that particular screw, you can pull this blank out. It is a blank. Now, Acer has about 25 different models of this, so there's a lot of them to go through. But I didn't notice any that actually had an optical drive. But if you pull this out, you can see there actually is a connector in here. So if you could find a laptop optical drive module and pop it in here, you might be good to go, in fact. So it's interesting that they have it, the capability there, but they don't actually provide it. This wins the award for having the most screws I have ever seen on the bottom of a laptop. This 15.6-inch model has, around 20 Phillips head screws or so. Of course, there's that one that holds the optical drive module, or fake optical drive, dummy here, but there's screws every which way around this thing. Now they're Phillips head at least, so that's pretty easy. You don't need an obscure screwdriver. And if you take all those off and start prying around, and I suggest you start by the SD card slot because that's right over here. That one actually opens up to the top frame where it fits. You can work off the bottom. The usual plastic tabs, don't break them when you pull it off. And another little gotcha is the motherboard is going to want to kind of really stay stuck into these portholes over here. But you can take that off, and there's 2 RAM slots, like I said, and a 2.5-inch hard drive spot as well, which is obviously, well, where the hard drive is. For the ones that have caching on the hard drive, that's built into the hard drive. It's not a separate SSD module on that. More ventilation over here. Kind of overbuilt in the ventilation department, really to allow to cool the Nvidia dedicated graphics. So, you know, if you have one that just says Intel integrated 5500 graphics, you're going to be seriously chilling. Plenty of room in here. It's 1.1 inches. It's not too thick. It's not uber thin either. So there's enough room for cooling in here. It doesn't get burning hot on the bottom. While we've got it positioned like this, you can see it has quite a lot of ports. Now, putting them towards the front is not the most convenient thing in the world, I don't think. The cords are kind of bumping into your hands, but hey, what can you do? VGA port there, we have gigabit Ethernet, we have our full-size HDMI, we have 2 USB 3.0 ports, and a headphone jack over here. And on the other side of our 5.29-pound 15.6-inch laptop, that's where the power plug plugs in, and here's a USB 2.0 port with charging. So pretty decent ports here. It's really a good all-around machine. You got most of the ports you're going to need. So if you're looking for something for college work, a general purpose machine that's not going to set you back too much money, this pretty much covers all the bases there. Especially if you get into the dedicated graphics, if you're into gaming, or maybe you like to edit video for fun on the side, that sort of thing, where a dedicated GPU is going to help you out. The power brick is very small and very light, and it is still adequate to power the dual-core CPU with the Nvidia option inside. Now, the 940M is not a big-time power consumer either, so hey, that's okay. So this is not going to weigh you down too much in your bag either. The battery obviously is sealed inside and has gotten smaller over the iterations of the E5. It's a 33 watt-hour battery, 4-cell, and that translates into 2,500 milliamps. Not much. There are smartphones, right, that have more milliamps, but this, of course, has a higher voltage and amperage rating, so they're not always equivalent. You can't just go by that. Now, that sounds pretty lame, but if you're just doing productivity work with this and it's running on Intel integrated graphics, and this is with our Core i5 Broadwell generation model, it's not as bad as you might think, and it actually manages about 6.5 hours. That's with brightness set to 50%, which is just adequate, and with Wi-Fi on and in use. So not as bad as you might think for that teeny battery in there. And now a word from our sponsors, the Casper mattress. It's back, and you can try it for 100 nights. Absolutely safe. Money back guarantee. It's the outrageously comfortable mattress, and your Casper mattress is shipped to you direct. And in the description for this video, you can save $50. It'll take you to Casper.com and use mobile to save $50 on a mattress. So how about performance? Well, in terms of CPU performance, it's going to be a lot like any Ultrabook on the market, since it uses an Ultrabook CPU, and a lot of larger laptops do these days as well. We have the 2.2 gigahertz Intel Core i5-5200U in here. Again, 8 gigs of RAM and a terabyte conventional spinning hard drive. And you can see how it did. First, here's our 3D Mark score. This is testing the Nvidia 940M. We had 2 gigs of DDR3 VRAM in here. There is a 4 gig option. I really wouldn't recommend it. There's not enough oomph in this GPU. You're not going to be gaming at 4K resolution anyway, so just go with the standard 2 gigs of VRAM. So this is our performance result test right here, which is pretty healthy. It's 2451 in 3D Mark 11. Now, in the extreme test, it scored 767. And for PC Mark 8 Home Accelerated, we scored 2690, which is pretty respectable. Dragged down a little bit by the fact it's not running on an SSD, it's running on a conventional hard drive. You could, of course, upgrade the hard drive to an SSD later if you wanted to. That's a fairly reasonable score there, and you can see that we didn't see anything like thermal throttling going on. I wouldn't expect that with this Core i5 dual core right here. For W Prime, it computed Pi in 19.5 seconds, like just about every other Core i5 Ultrabook on the market. Geekbench 3, single core, 2636, multi-core, 5290, pretty healthy score there. So overall, like I said, this is basically an Ultrabook with a little help in the GPU department, and certainly is more affordable than an Alienware 13, which does much the same thing. Given the full HD screen, that again isn't that bad for a TN panel, and reasonably decent speakers. It's fine for multimedia use. With 8 gigs of RAM on the Core i5 in here, you can have several tabs open in Chrome or IE, your choice, or in this case, this is the Microsoft Edge browser, since we're running Windows 10 Home on this. And we'll just do a quick test of video playback so you can hear how it plays, and we're going to look at the Moto Watch, the Moto 360 2nd Gen.
This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and welcome to my Watch Emporium. Yes, this is the review of the 2nd generation Moto 360 smartwatch.
Now, I wouldn't call that, high-fi fidelity sound there, but that's not too bad, and the volume is perfectly adequate. Certainly if you're watching YouTube videos, something like that, it's good enough. If you're listening to a 2-hour movie or music, you're probably going to want to use the headphone jack on this. Wireless performance has been pretty good. We have Atheros Qualcomm dual band Wi-Fi 802.11 AC with Bluetooth 4.0 on board. So they're not slumming here, and they're not giving you single band Wi-Fi 802.11n. And notice every once in a while the trackpad just seems to go to sleep and ignore me. It's doing that right now. Windows and trackpads, huh? I'm sure it'll come back soon. There we go. So how about gaming? We'll test that little BioShock Infinite now so you can see how it plays. But here's the hint. It does pretty well. All right, now we're in BioShock Infinite. And you can see what our settings are here. We're running at full screen, 1920 by 1080 at medium. We have fraps running in the upper left corner to show you the frame rate. Typically, it should run in around 30 to 35 at this setting here. Now you can drop it down to 1366 by 768 at medium, and you'll be pushing 60 frames per second, which is pretty good. Or obviously you could drop this to low if you want a higher frame rate, but we're going to roll with this to see how it goes. So we're running anywhere from around pretty much 28 frames, which is playable in this game, but I honestly might drop it to low settings or 1366 by 768 because I'd like to see more than 30 frames, but that's up to you. If you weren't using a frame counter, you might look at this and say, hey, this plays pretty nice. Certainly is easy enough to control the game and interact. So that's BioShock Infinite on the Acer Aspire E5 with the Nvidia 940M dedicated graphics card. So that's the Acer Aspire E5, available now, and like I said, many different models and configurations. I think that the Core i5 is pretty common. The dedicated graphics, a little bit hard to find, but you can find it. And it starts with even lower end CPUs if you're really on a budget and you don't need super duper computing horsepower. All in all, it's not bad for the price. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full written review and subscribe to our YouTube channel.